Hello, my friends. Once more, it is I, Rob, here in the Lair of OmnusI, my throne of power from which I dispense gaming experience to my beloved players. This is another State of the Dungeon address. Coming a little late, so you'll excuse if I miss a few details here and there, but relating to you on our latest successful adventure. This was on the 24th of August, 2017. The game, 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. All players eventually came in attendance, which was nice. And this began the players' ascent upon the Scarlet Moon Hall, the sect of druids who are attempting to take care of the disasters afflicting the valley that the players are in with their own powers and magic. So, the players progressed along, and this was as they were on the road after they got done with a very nasty little battle with some stone mephits up a cliffside. But they progressed, and eventually they, after a full day's journey. In these Badlands, there aren't a ton of encounters that I wish to inflict upon them. The Wandering Monster odds were halved in this area, especially since large groups they could have heard and possibly avoided. But the group eventually found a curiosity of my own design. They found in the midst of these paths through these Badlands, and they saw the occasional flyer going overhead and such, but what they did end up finding was a large cleared area, flat, and a kind of a bowl-shaped depression. And there was this old ramshackle house made out of weathered timbers, looking like something that might fit in with kind of a Wild West style. It was all ripsaw timber without a great deal of craft, just thrown up for shelter. Shingled roof, though. And there were these tall metal kind of wind vanes with a rotary wind blade that was on top of these tall towers. So the group was curious, of course. They knew that this wasn't the place they were going to, but yeah, they wanted to check it out. And when they attempted to sneak up on the place, they noticed that the wind vanes would turn and orient on the person who was going through. Nobody was stealthy enough to get by them without these things noticing. So, eventually, the party's just like, this is silly, being coy with this. And I believe it was Glim who went up to knock. Glim and Otto to knock on the door. While Geth, the sorcerer, was going around, they found in a fireplace they could see through the window, there was this little tiny bound figure that looked like it was made of flame in the hearth. So he was trying to get in through the window and such. The door was promptly answered by a woman wearing kind of stone-colored short dress and with a hood and a veil covering her face. And this woman, in a rather harsh voice, invited them in, and made no bones about it. She was a Medusa, and she had purposefully concealed herself so that she wouldn't go turning them into stone, or that they wouldn't try killing her on sight, and that she was going to offer them hospitality. They went inside, and they kind of heard some of her story. How she's cursed. She can't touch earth and stone anymore without great pain and consequence to her. And as a result, she has to live in a wooden house, touching nothing but wood all the time. Where the Medusa are in this setting, they're very tied into the elemental plane of earth, fitting for the Temple of Elemental Evil storyline. She was a good hostess. However, while she was relating some backstory, because I wanted to kind of catch these characters up close to the point where the first characters who were TPK'd, going up to the Temple of Water, they didn't have enough backstory, basically. They didn't poke in all the crannies the first group did, just trying to get information about the world. So this served to catch them up a bit. And occasionally, the very young player of Abor, the dwarven paladin, will say the odd things that aren't necessarily well thought through. And at one point she said, it was a big, and I was looking for an expression where somebody might say blank you. Well, he said the expression, to which she coyly responded, maybe not now, but maybe later. So she took that as an invitation, because she wasn't really well on social sciences either. When he just kind of blurted that out, well, I thought, well, she's a lonely Medusa. He's a dwarf who's kind of got a race that's got ties to earth and stone, so she might not be turned off by a quick one-off. But of course, you know, just a little banter. And they heard basically that there were these disruptions that are causing all of the problems. And with her ties, she's kind of become a diviner. Since she can't reach out to the earth and stone as much, she uses magical divination to basically scratch that itch. And she could tell them that one of the disruptions was coming from the very place they're going to, Scarlet Moon Hall, where these druids are. So the party ate, drank, they were well taken care of, and she gave them a place for the night where they'd be safe from scrying or attack, which they gratefully accepted, because why wouldn't you? She seemed like she was a good hostess. That night she made a proposition to... hello, Magic. Oh, come here. That night they made a she made a proposition to Abor, which he did not take her up on. So she went off and found Glug instead. So, this is Magic, for those of you who don't remember my Magic Kitty. She is the unofficial hench cat of OmnusI, and she enjoys her time here at the Lair of OmnusI. She does like to listen to me talk, so as long as she's getting attention. But she won't stay here forever. So, they got rest in the morning. She made them food. She was in a good mood. Glug was in a good mood, so they knew what was going on there. Glug's like, she's willing, why not? That's how it goes. So the party left in the morning. She gave them directions, and they were closing in on Scarlet Moon Hall with a pretty good direction on where they were going. They made good survival rolls to stay oriented the right way. So as they were closing in, I rolled an encounter, and they met a druid who was going to... she was meditating on Scarlet Moon Hall because she was a higher level druid, and she could sense that something wasn't quite right. This, at the same time, basically was going to be a little bit of a key for the party that, maybe they should, keep their wits about them and, take what's going on with a grain of salt, but also to understand they're good people who are being drawn to this thing as well. And not necessarily everybody is kill on sight. So, at any rate, thank you, Magic. You're taking the show away from me. So, they talked with her and showed them different things about the cult information that they had, which really bothered her because some of those things were bothering her basic druid tendencies. So she decided she'd travel with them and see what was going on. She cast a spell so that they could get there, not quite instantaneously, but it covered miles with moments. So when they got there, they got to some friendly druids on the outskirts of this hill, and dotting the hill... Hi. You're not going to let me talk. On top of the hill was the large tower, and there was a fieldworks around it, which looked like it came from the ruins of a keep. They were told that there were keeps built on top of all of the fallen temples of elemental evil. So They looked at that for a sign, but they also saw these bonfires around the hill on which this tower was. So they decided they went to the first campfire. They were going to go straight up, bypass all the campfires and go right up to the tower. Then they realized that was exactly what got them TPK'd in the first group, bypassing everything behind to go up towards the end. So the first campfire, they talked to the druids and realized that the druids were pretty happy with the current situation. They didn't see anything wrong, and that they really didn't have any malice towards the group. Matter of fact, they were kind of celebrating in advance for this rite to be over with. A giant wicker giant who was perpetually on fire was the centerpiece of their rite. So they're looking forward to this solving all the problems. And apparently they're gulled in. So then the group goes to another bonfire and discovers that, oh, these are cultists. Fire elemental cultists, which they hadn't encountered before. So the group challenged them and ate a couple of fireballs for their trouble. Nobody was killed because, in all of the heat, the druid cast a spell on them so that they could endure heat, which gave them resistance to the fire. So the three fighters of the group, Glim, Terran, and Abor, were in armor and were resistant to the fire. So when they took the fireballs, they were hurt but not bad. The others all took one single fireball, and it also wiped out most of Janelle, the druid's entourage. She came with a number of creatures. So they were all cooked. That made Janelle mad. So the group basically charged in and did what they do best. Started ripping things up. They tied down one of the druids right away. Cultists. And the other one backed up and fireballed the group that was moving up into melee again. Yeah, it's a total of 3 fireballs some of them took, and I believe that took down Glim. And the fight got pretty nasty. However, Otto was able to get Glim back up, and the sorceress duel that took place between Geth and one of the cultists got pretty one-sided when they got piled up on in hand-to-hand combat. So that encounter went well for the group, except they took a lot of damage. Well, when you're traveling with a high-level druid who can cure wounds, that really wasn't too bad. And the other druids from the first encounter came over, because fireballs are easy to notice. And they're like, look, these aren't druids, look at these symbols. And one of them, rolling for them, rolled a natural 20 to recognize the significance of their symbol, which was addressed to the Prince of Elemental Evil, Imix, the Eternal Fire. So, all of a sudden, the story is up, and these druids now know that they've been suckered, and that these cultists are in and amongst the faithful, which made them really wonder exactly how legitimate the rite that they were contributing to was. So, the druids quickly started healing everybody, and they're like, okay, you go up and get the truth of what's going on. Janelle was besides herself, and she was just ready to storm up there and lay it all out to the fire. The druids are like, we'll stop any reinforcements from coming up. You do what you have to do. The party's like, so they're on our side, and we don't have to worry about getting swamped from behind? Excellent! Let's go up and keep taking care of things. So they went up and they found some more druids, who were, again, didn't know what was going on. All they knew was some fireballs went off in the night, and when they saw the unholy symbols and they believed, they're like, well, the people at the next bonfire, we don't know them very well. They're all cloaked. They stink of wolves. We really couldn't see any of them. They were really intentionally trying to be hidden. So the party went off to engage them. Found out that they were actually bugbears. Nasty monsters. Individually rather powerful. 5th edition, I believe, kind of raised the challenge on them a bit from 2nd and 3rd edition days. And they make for a nasty fight, especially when they hit, they do an extra die worth of damage because of their savagery. So the party faced 3 of them and their 2 wargs. Now, again, Janelle cast a wall of fire, 4th level spell for a druid, and sealed off the wargs so that they couldn't participate in the fight. So the group had a tough fight against the bugbears, but now they're rolling some pretty significant damage, and Great Weapon Fighter, allowing you to reroll a poor roll in damage, combined with many of the high damage ratings of their weapons, means that every time they hit, it's going to hurt quite a bit. Also, the group is 4th level, so they're all packing, very good strength for those who get into hand-to-hand. So, the group rolls the bugbears, taking some damage, but not a significant amount. That's pretty much where we ended the night. Janelle is still there. She's expended some of her spells, so the group knows that she's not at 100%. I believe for the most part the group is doing all right as far as the number of spells that they've expended, but as they go up, they're going to have to rely on their own stores and power to keep themselves intact. A lot of what they've already encountered has just been the preliminary. There's plenty more fighting to be done. So, where we leave off, on the slopes in front of Scarlet Moon Hall, dealing with fire cultists, always a challenge, and desperate fighting ahead. So, I am Rob here at the Lair of OmnusI. Thank you for joining me, and hoping that you have many profitable adventures ahead. Farewell.